Hey, everybody, welcome back. It feels like it's been way more than just 4 weeks. Michael Wann is here. Yay! This is episode number 34 of Project Kids. Good morning, Michael. You're in a different room.
I'm in a different room. I'm in a different house. I'm a different person with a different mouse.
We have a mouse?
Just ride with house. Like sometimes you just got to be simple that way. It's good to be back. You're right. It feels like a really, really long time. Having Tuesday morning as a constant touch point over the past 2 years, like I didn't realize how integrated that got into my regular routine. So yes, it definitely feels very different to not have had that, and then it feels really nice to be back, and we got a lot to catch up on. A lot of interesting stuff.
All right, so you're in a different room in a different house. You're a different person with a different mouse. Explain the poem.
I don't know if I want to go all the way in, like right in the beginning, but I'll give like a little bit. I'll give a little bit of a clue. So I'm in Allentown, Pennsylvania right now.
You're kidding me. Okay.
I've been in Allentown for so Christy, who you met last time, she's been there. There's I think it's just generally referred to as like a healing collective / Airbnb in this house. It's a beautiful home, probably about like 100 years and all these different rooms with different people. And so she's been here for the month of December. So I've been spending time coming back and forth to this place. And I'm not particularly familiar with Allentown. Allentown is maybe about 2 hours from where I am in Nome countryside. But that's been kind of a new thing for me, and a new setting for the past month since we last saw each other. So there's a lot more than that, but I'm going to just kind of leave it at that.
Have you been spying?
Have I been spying?
Yeah. So this is almost impossible to explain other than our enormous pile of evidence that everything you and I do is interconnected in ways that is sort of beyond belief. So for the past month, as there has been like no glass bead game, I've been doing these episodes with my friend Elisa, right? I don't know if you know who Elisa E is. She wrote the books Our Life Beyond MK Ultra, and she this year just did like a re-edit. She had 2 books. She kind of pulled them into one and updated them and then released them on my friend Chris and Steve Crimmy's publishing label, released it. And so we've been doing sort of, one of the things that a lot of people asked me about as you and I were doing the glass bead game was to go more into the sort of MK Ultra past, because I would bring things up in reference, but I wouldn't go deep into the explanation of them because I had done stuff about that previously with Randy or whatever. And a lot of that was revolving around conversations that I'd had with Elisa over the years. And so I decided to sort of bring her in to talk some about her book and do some reflections on the way that I see sort of a lot of the MK Ultra information and how it relates to what you and I do with the glass bead game. And so I've done 2 episodes with her. Like she and I do an ongoing series called Deep Ultra, but these are just for our glass bead people, and I'm calling them cenotes. You know what a cenote is? Cenotes are like these hidden, like underground pockets of water that, like, I'll show you what one looks like just so you can see. It's like, let's see, let me find a picture of some pictures, and then I will show you what they look like. They're like underground water. Like it's like they call it permanent water, right? They're like underground caves where people can go do scuba diving and whatnot. It's quite dangerous to do it. In some of them, like there's many of them that are not at all open to the public. But just so the description of what a cenote is, it's a natural pit or sinkhole resulting from the collapse of limestone bedrock that exposes groundwater. So it's like these. It's called permanent water. It's like a cave chamber with permanent water in it, right? And it's so we're doing these cenotes, and there's a reason I called it that. And we've been discussing stories and altars from her book, but in both episodes, like kind of almost sort of non sequitur from what we were talking about, she has mentioned Allentown, Pennsylvania. And the amount of times it's come up in her discussions with people over the years about projects, programs, and mind control. So, like, she has, like, literally, like, in the one.
What was some of the context? What was some of the context of?
Well, she grew up. She grew up. She was born in New Jersey and then migrated a bit to Tennessee for a bit, and then down to Florida, where she was when she was a teenager. But when
What part of Florida? Just curious.
The what?
What part of Florida?
Tampa area.
Tampa?
Yeah.
Perfect. Go on.
Okay. So she was talking about, like, her dad and the companies he worked at, and the military bases that he worked on, and then sort of this connection through, like, some military things and then some secret society kinds of things between the area in New Jersey where she was and Allentown, Pennsylvania, right? It's not too far of a distance from New Jersey to Allentown. Is that correct? Yeah.
That is correct.
And what's interesting, there's a very, very famous gym in Allentown, Pennsylvania, that has produced a number of high-level gymnasts over the years that have all, at some point, sort of described a level of chaos and abuse that you and I would recognize as something different than just what they say it is, right? So there's a gymnastics MK factory there for sure. But it was weird. And this one we just did this past week, like, we were talking about something else, and then she just out of nowhere goes, and Allentown, Pennsylvania. And then we were back on topic, right? So it's been highlighted in both of the episodes that I've kind of done in this space where you and I, normally put out content. I'm not recording on Tuesday mornings with her necessarily, but so that's been interesting. And then we had also, like, further entwining things, some discussion of Cedars of Lebanon that I sort of told you about, that Danny and I had come into. And our friends, your friends, Bree and Austin, who had been on the show, after listening to Danny and I talk about Cedars of Lebanon, that day they went into an antique shop and found a mug that said Tall Cedars of Lebanon, Atlantic City, right? And when I opened their email, I had just finished recording the first one with Elisa, where she talked about growing up in Atlantic City and all of these weird things. So then I got right back to her. I'm like, was your dad a Tall Cedar of Lebanon, which also has a lot of its headquarters in Pennsylvania and Maryland, what you and I have talked about. So there is this wrapping around of narratives already happening, of things that we have sort of talked about and people we've talked about them with. But anyway, that's how Allentown came up. So tell me all about it.
So I want to just do some touch points to what you brought up. The first thing I want to talk about, like, Austin and Bree, and the way I approach, like, this whole dance, which we're doing, is like whatever shows up, like, that's part of the dance. Like, whether or not it's injected in there, like, it's naturally occurring. Like, I don't like ask those questions. I just surrender to that. So I do a show with Mark Steves, a regular show with Mark Steves.
Apparently I do a regular show with Mark Steves now as well.
Excellent. All, like, this tapestry, this weaving of all of these different stories and ideas and people. So on Mark's independent show, he created this thing called The Scene. It's like a downloadable thing, and it's more or less like a general like a template for how to go and have mystical experiences out in the world. And I guess it has to do with, like, rolling dice and maps and stuff like that. It's meant to be fun. But, like, also, like, there's a level of like serious psychonautic sort of exploration of reality. So when I went the same weekend the same day I was down at Austin Bree's house, where we recorded together, Austin told me the story about how they downloaded Mark's Scene, like, instruction book. And he says, like, so we just followed it. And we, like, we did the prescribed sort of things to do. And where it led to him. So Austin grew up, I want to say, in South Dakota, like somewhere near where Laura grew up, like somewhere, like, if it wasn't South Dakota, it was like Wisconsin, like in my general, like that part of the world.
One of those cold places. Yeah.
Right. And he's doing this, like, he's rolling the dice. He's like, I turn left here, and he's driving in, like, nowhere, North Carolina. And he sees a guy on a riding lawnmower, and he's like, I know that guy. and he pulls over and he like gets off of his riding or out of his car, and he walks over to him and he stares at the guy, and the guy like gets off his lawnmower and like gets up and looks at Austin. He's like, "Are you Austin?" He's like, "Yes." "Are you?" I forget the guy's name, but it turns out like this guy was like his neighbor growing up in Wisconsin. But like that level of like interwovenness. And so the point I'm trying to make with this is like where this all began was like there is this thing which seems to be happening, you know, whether it's like you and me or whether it's like more so what you and I are talking about, and not just limited to you and me, but anyone who does this sort of stuff. Like we're creating these nodal points, which there's a magnetism, which magnetizes other people to come in, and then they have these experiences. And for whatever reason, you know, the Olympic bobsledders of Austin and Bree, like they're really, really like woven into it. So like I wanted to start with that story. Like hopefully they're going to watch this, and like, you know, it's been fascinating to see that unfold. So I want to throw that.
I think people are starting to play the glass bead game in ways like, I don't know if they're doing it in the ways that we had imagined when we first started, but the game develops in the way that it does. And people, some surprising people have reached out to me and let me know that they want to play the glass bead game.
Right, exactly.
Including
like,
our
thing that happens, and like they it's like woven in, and they have their own experiences, but it's all like locked into this one as well, like where it begins.
I would never have imagined that Sam Tripoli would be asking me, "Can you tell me what the glass bead game is?" Right? And so I had a great show with Sam, but it was interesting to try and explain that to him. And then our favorite proprietor of the escape room known as Plato's Cave reached out to me and in a different set of words, but basically saying, "Can you teach me how to play the glass bead game?" Right. And so I had a great little chat with Howdy, like not a show recording, because he's, you know, been desperately trying to remember his other lives. And he was doing all of this past life regression. And he was like, it got me nowhere. Nowhere at all. I'm like, well, this is how you do it. Right. So I said, well, maybe if you stop looking at it as past lives and start looking at it as concurrent lives that you can interact with, you know, in different ways. And I started going into, you know, some of the repetitive ideas that had come up over the course of what we do. And I showed him the Dinuvan belt and the Indra's net of jewels and all the, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And he was like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna go look into this. I'll be back."
We're gonna go to you're gonna love where we're gonna go today. You're just
all right. So
go on.
So all of that stuff, right? So all of those interactions and weavings and whatnot. And next, starting in January, I'm gonna have for 3 episodes, Juan Ayala from Wann on One. So it will be from Juan to Juan, come in and play a few rounds with me and see how that goes. I'm going to start inviting other people to come and add their nodes and their beads to the tapestry and see where this goes. And then I just was on for 2 episodes, and I'm going to be back on tonight with them on Esoteric America, just literally only about Austin, right? They've done a whole month on Austin based on all of that kind of stuff. And there's developing like you're saying, like methods of playing the game, sort of things to look at that haven't been what people generally necessarily look for when trying to uncover the old stuff of a place, right? Stuff that can be techniques or coordinates that can be mapped in modernity or old shit or whatever, right? And so it's been fun. All right. So back to Allentown, wherever you're taking me.
Okay. So I want to let's go back to the last time we spoke, which was it was the Tuesday. Was it the Tuesday after or the Tuesday before Thanksgiving?
You were still traveling.
I was in St. Petersburg.
Yes.
And St. Petersburg is separated by a large body of water from the city of Tampa.
Yes.
So it's basically Tampa.
Yep.
Okay. And what's really interesting is we took this. We took a trip. My sister organized it. Like there are these islands out in the Gulf of Mexico from the mouth of Tampa Bay, which I'll get to in a moment. But that was part of that journey. So I want to touch. I'm bringing this up for 2 reasons. So you said it's Elisa, correct? That's the
Elisa. Yeah.
And so you said that she grew up in Tampa.
Yeah.
And St. Petersburg has been significant to me, two reasons. One, personally, as when I first moved to Baltimore, I did the trip down. I drove from Baltimore down to see my parents at the Potemkin villages, and then went to St. Petersburg, and then returned just as, like literally when that trip happened was when the Ukrainian war began, and I was like in Crimea. That was a place in Baltimore, all that sort of stuff. Like that was in play. And then St. Petersburg is where James Shelby Downard lived.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Right.
Yeah.
And so like all of that came in, and me and Mark talked a lot about that as Mark was doing like interviews with Michael Hoffman. And Michael Hoffman is one of the key players who's brought James Shelby Downard's work into like a mainstream, maybe not necessarily mainstream, but a wider consciousness. So all of those are kind of in play. Like those are touch points. I don't have like a story, but I'm like, okay, that's a point, and that's a point, and that's a point. So you and I, we finished our conversation, and Christy was with me, and we were making a trip. Did you give me screen share capability? Yes, you did. So I'm going to begin with right here. So we begin making a trip from St. Petersburg. So where are we? So this is St. Petersburg. Is that wider now? Right down here is where Tampa, St. Petersburg are. And we were going right here. It's called Hostel in the Forest. It's this really interesting place in Brunswick, Georgia. But we drove up the west coast of Florida, and we stopped by in this place called Crystal River. And the reason why we stopped by there is because it's this Mound complex, this archaeological place, and we were like, let's go and stop by this place. So we're going through this journey of like just exploring the west coast of Florida. And I was explaining this to Mark, like, because Mark and I were talking right around the same time. He's like, wow, I just recorded an episode of Esoteric America where the guy completely goes into this part of Florida, which you're driving through right now, as being like really, really significant and like a biblical significance, what have you. So anyway, so the point of it, so we go there, we drive through there, and then we drive all the way up to this Brunswick, Georgia, which happens to be like, I don't know. So this is where we stayed. We stayed in the hostel in the forest, and this is Jekyll Island. This is 16 miles away. So we're like right in the heart of like, like where the magic for the Federal Reserve was created, all of that. And so this plays into, I think, like this unfolding of this unique period of time, at least in, I can say in my own personal life, which brought me to Allentown, but then also a little bit wider. I'm going to bring in one more layer to the story before I pause and give it back to you, which is I'm also talking to Ross Ben, and he's someone who I talk to regularly. And one of the touch points which Ross Ben likes to go to frequently is the Philadelphia experiment. Okay. And so the Philadelphia experiment has to do with time travel. And there's key points in it. There was like the Philadelphia experiment, which supposedly took place in August of 1943, where the USS Eldridge was disappeared and then reassembled in Norfolk, Virginia at this down here. And then it's also linked to another government experiment which took place in Montauk, New York, which happened exactly 40 years later in 1983. And so now we've got like Montauk, which then connects directly into Stranger Things /Dark. So part of Ross Ben's talking points is like we're coming to the next 40th cycle. So Philadelphia to Montauk was exactly 40 years, from 1943 to 1983. And so August of this coming year is going to be the next 40th year period. So he's like that's like something he's bringing into like the awareness, and mine and his work has resonated with folks in the same way mine and your work has resonated with people with the glass bead game. So the whole point of what I'm talking about right now is just this like real-time coalescence of watching things starting to come together in all of our different in all of the different nodes which we are individually and collectively part of. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Let's see. Well, I'll bring up a different one because I want to show you something. Let's go to a map of Florida or Tampa area because I looked at this. I looked at Tampa when I was starting to do the show with Elisa. All right, let's zoom this and go in on it. So, she talks a lot about MacDill Air Force Base, right? So this is here in Tampa, okay?
Can
MacDill
you
Air.
zoom out so I can see where that is?
Yeah, I'm gonna zoom out.
Okay.
Okay, so it's right there.
A little bit further so I could see it relative to where the bay is in St. Petersburg. Okay, so all right.
So here's MacDill, right? And then like Boeing comes up over and over for me. So I asked her about Boeing, right? Because it comes up for her as well. But you can see that there's a Boeing facility not too far from there. Just go to Boeing, Tampa. Boeing is up here, which I think maybe even a little closer to where you were talking about.
I mean, it's all in the same, like, yes.
Right. Okay. And so we were talking about this one experience that Elisa had as a child, this one altar called Rabbit. And that I have a friend and a client who, I don't know if you know her personally, but she certainly listens to all of our work, who like had this complementary memory. And this friend grew up across the street from what's called the Boeing black hole. Now, in talking with Elisa, we figured out that at the time of the Rabbit altar, she was not in Florida yet. But I was trying to see if there was like this weird sort of like cross boundary connection through Boeing, right? But Elisa talks about a lot of the same sort of, if you go back and look at her work, which her original books came out 10 years ago. So many of the things we've touched on are touched on from a slightly different perspective. Her perspective on all of this is different than ours, but the fact that the same locations and the same groups and the same factors come up over and over again, I think lends credence to both iterations of whatever we're saying, that there is something happening at these locations that are generating very strange like phenomena or like experiential fields, right? So I just wanted to show that because you were kind of showing the same area. Where is the area so is St. Petersburg?
So okay, so where you are right now,
St. Pete Clearwater Airport.
So we could see a little bit more on the bottom. So if you look at,
got it.
You see where it says the word St. Petersburg?
Yeah.
And then if you were to go up a little bit, like maybe where the 1 o'clock position is, or even just above the B in St. Petersburg. You see the word St. Petersburg where you see it on that map. So my sister's house.
Hey, we have to pause. There's a fire alarm going off in my apartment. This has been happening all week. Somebody's fucking. Ugh. Okay, we're back. Go ahead.
All right. So, all right, where are we? So, where the word St. Petersburg is, right?
Right. Yep.
Where the B is, if you were to zoom in above that.
Okay.
So, okay, yeah, that's good enough. So, like where it says that, what does that say? Vinoy Park, is that where it is? So that's like kind of where my sister lives. That's where I was staying. She lives in historic Old Northeast. If you see where it says that word, that's the neighborhood which she lives in. And so it's like we're like, I was like physically on the eastern side of that peninsula. Now, if you zoom back a little bit more, so we could see where the Tampa Bay enters into the Gulf of Mexico.
Yep, got it.
Even a little bit more so we could see some of the Gulf of Mexico. So, all right, so the green islands, which you see on the other side of that bridge, that road that goes over, that's where we went out to those islands, which there was supposedly like that was significant to like when the Spaniards built their first colony when they came to Florida. But regardless, in the esoteric America about this part of Florida, like these islands were really significant. So the whole point, which I'm trying to paint in right now, is like these are touch points, which we are like, this is a land space which is showing up, like both in her background and my background, all sorts of different things, just in the same way Allentown is. Like, I didn't have any plan to come to Allentown, but it's just like where I came from after this trip, like where life just naturally unfolded.
Okay, before we move on to, I want to say something about the thing with the 40 years and Roz Ben and whatever in just a second. But you showed me some Crystal Park or some place that you went, and there was some interesting picture of like the inside formation of the mound. Can you bring that back?
Certainly. Let me go get that. So I've got that image. I've got this image.
This one. This
second one.
So that one. That's that one and the next one. Okay. So my guess is that what we're looking at here is this is the mound, and then they're saying this is like what the structure looks like underneath the ground. Is that what are these things about the pyramids here?
Okay. So this is one of the mounds which is accessible, and they built this steps up so you could go to the top of it. And so this is where, let me expand upon that, make this bigger. This is a map. This red dot is where Crystal River is, and it's showing the cultural relationship. So based upon artifacts which they found here, they connected to Mesoamerica, like all of the Yucatan Peninsula. What was the word you used for the
Yucatan? Yucatan. Cenotes.
Yes. Like I know cenotes as it relates to the Yucatan Peninsula. That's where they're most famous, because everyone goes scuba diving there and dies. But then it also connects to like Michigan and the copper in Michigan. So this image is from the like there's like a small museum when you first walk in, and this is a picture which I took of a wall on there showing how this location connects to all of these other cultural touch points. Okay,
so see where we are here in Austin, there's a lot of mounds. Just like if you're walking along the trail here, like obviously we've shown the Butler Mound that looks like High Point in your narrative and whatnot, but even just right out here, like in the neighborhood we're living in, there's these like apartments that you don't notice because of the way they're built, but like that shit's on a mound, dude. That is just like a little lumpy hill. That's a mound. So there's some of those all around the trail, but then there's also literally like part of the structure all around the lake here are these flat topped pyramids with stairs or something leading up them like that. So we have exposed inner workings of these mounds, and then we have ones that are still covered and just stuff on top. But so yeah, when you show this here, like I want you to come see, Laura, like this, you see these kinds of structures. Some of them are stepped though. They're not smooth necessarily. Some of them are stepped all around the lake here. Some of the bridges are set into those. Right. And so like this looks like this area out over here with all these like just hilly mounds, and it looks exactly like right here.
Yes.
You were telling me about this guy that Mark talked to from Florida. So somebody during that same time period sent me a map of the United States and called it like the old, I can't remember if he said it was the Old Testament map or the New Testament map, that basically makes Texas, Egypt, and I can't remember what it makes Florida, but something very significant, in looking into things like pyramid culture and like what the deeper meaning of all of this stuff really is, right?
Did it say that Florida was the Garden of Eden?
I didn't say Garden of Eden.
That's what the Esoteric America piece on Florida. It was a guy who was talking about Florida as the Garden of Eden, and like all these sort of reasons why that would be the fair conclusion. I don't know if I necessarily subscribe to that, but I know that was the touch point, which at least from Mark, what Mark told me, that's what it was about.
Let me see. I'm gonna see if I can find the picture that he
see if you can find. I've heard of that map. I've heard that mentioned before. And by the way, this ties in directly to the map of the Ben Ishmael stuff, in my opinion. Like when you begin to weave these stories together.
There it is. I got it. Okay.
All right.
So let me see if I can. Let me make the picture. Let's just save this image so I can make it big. Just call it Egypt for now. All right, let's go here. Downloads, Egypt. All right, now I can share it. Okay. Right, so it doesn't say what Florida is, but this is
Gotcha.
okay. It doesn't say what it is, so that's kind of interesting that it doesn't say.
Interesting that isn't this like New York up here, which is Babylon?
Over
Right. Yeah.
right. So this it's kind of interesting to look at these things this way when we consider like what things have been going on in certain locations, right? But that turns this whole area that we're talking to over here also into the Egyptian Sea, right? And whatever. So it's kind of an interesting idea, right? But you know, I've always felt super drawn to Egypt. And if that somehow explains my attraction to Texas, which makes less sense considering many of the things that I'm interested in, it's kind of a fun way just to sort of, you know, like reposition reality. Like maybe during this period of time, that's what this is. I don't know, but it would be interesting. I wonder if there's like a more detailed map of this. I'll have to see if I can find a similar one that has any notation about what this would be. But I guess that makes the Mississippi the Euphrates River, right?
Okay.
So this area that you've been would have been on the other side of the Euphrates as opposed to being on the other side of the Mississippi. So okay, I just wanted to show you that and tell you that about the pyramids around out here as well. What you were saying with these 40-year cycles, right? Like you're only 2 episodes into Dark, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. But the show, at least one, I don't know how to explain this. The show in a certain iteration operates on 33-year cycles, right?
Right.
Did you get to that part yet where you're seeing?
I've heard them mention 33 quite a few times. This happened 33 years ago.
Okay.
So like I was aware of that. And I'm always like, you know, 33 has 2 links in my mind, the obvious Masonic one, but then also the record, the spinning of the record, 33 LT.
Right. The third, that's a good one. But isn't your Francis Bacon map, isn't it the one with the weird 4 for 40. The 40? Right. So 40. So I don't imagine that they would tell us exactly, right? Like that. I think there's a lot of truth being let out in a lot of these shows, but the details are different. But I remember that weird 4, Laura and I were talking about that weird 4 on the other day, because one of the most significant pieces in one of the poems from the book Cameron sent me was on page 44. So I was trying to remember if your map was 44 or 40, but it's 40.
It was definitely 40.
40, yeah.
So I want to go one more place, or if there's more to say about the 40, we could do that. There's
so that those cycles that Razban is pointing out, because there's the Philadelphia experiment, the Montauk Project, somehow like Manhattan
somehow
Project.
It's in place, and like all of that's all Boeing stuff, right? That's all like military industrial.
It's all time and dimensional travel stuff that seems to always happen around nuclear facilities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to go, and this is where it starts getting really kind of interesting, or it gets even more interesting, I suppose. So let me think how I want to go and do this. We'll go here, and I'm going to go right. All right. So today, what day is today? Today is December 27th, 2022, correct?
Correct.
The day of this. Okay. So I did this this was part of a Christmas gift, which I gave my 2 sons. I gave them like little notebooks and stuff like that. And I included in each of them a little bit of the Wann family lineage told from 2 different perspectives. And so these were meant to be taken together. So this was in Danny's book. And so it's the legend of the Wann, who is Johnny Johnson. And so this is all factual historical stuff. Johnny Wann was granted royal authority by King James V of Scotland over all Scottish Romani, travelers, tinkers, walkers, Cardiana, or gypsies in 1540. He sat in the protection of Roslin until he was exiled to the Virginia colony in 1650. So 100 years later, he said to Virginia, for crimes unknown in the New World, He went underground for 100 years. Okay, so that's one story, and you've heard me talk about that before. Now, this is 9 generations of Wann men. This is like if you were to go and follow like ancestry.com, you'd put together this piece. So that's my son Toph, that's me, that's my father, that's his 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 father. And so this is the first one. His name is Johann Wilhelm Wann. All right. Born in 1735 in Rhineland-Pfalz, Germany, the same place where, right next to a town called Hesse, Hermann Hesse. And then he died in 1785 in Amity, PA. All right. So let's see where we got him right here. So here we have him. This is the same guy, Johann Wann. Johann Wilhelm Wann was born 1730.
Fascinating that I like that his middle name is Nickel.
No, that's his father.
Oh, okay.
So that's
okay,
like
gotcha.
even further back.
Gotcha.
Exactly. And particularly with my connection to my interest in nickel mines. But anyway, so he was born in Rhineland, Prussia, German Empire. His father was Johann Nickel Wann, and his mother was Anna, 26. He married Elizabeth Klemmer on December 27th, 1766 in Amityville, Amity Township, Berks. So what day is today again?
December 27th. Yes.
Yeah, 256 years to the day. So that's 16 times 16, which is 4 times 4. So now we're talking about a tesseract because we're talking about a cube and a cube, right?
Yep.
Right. So let's go. This is Allentown. Okay. That's where Allentown is. This is, and we could see right here. Is it here where we could see it was done? He was married in Amityville to Elizabeth Wann. So here's Allentown. This is Amityville. So what gets really interesting is I'm going to be moving out of Nome Countryside January 1st because Christy and I we more or less have a house sitting gig for the winter in a house that was built in the 1790s. Like all of this just like unfolded naturally. And it is, it's about 4 miles from Amityville. All right. So this is the church where this guy was both buried and married.
Okay.
So this is the church. It's originally, you could see right here, the first church was built in 1753 and used as a church and a school. Muhlenberg visited Amityville, blah, blah, blah. So what since today is the 16 by 16 square of whatever that ceremony was at that church in that location, which we're going to be moving into in 4 or 5 days. So we're going to go swing by there. We're going to go see if we could find a portal. See if this is where the Johnny Wann is coming through, because it's the same John Wann, because we've got this John Wann. Oh, I took it off.
Bring your picture back up because I want to talk about it anyway.
All right. So we've got this John Wann who moves to Virginia Colony in the 1650s after being named the King of the Gypsies by King James. And then this guy just appears up here. And I also like this piece right here. What does it say? Do I got this? Is it this? Is it that? Oh, right here. It is possible he is the same John Wann as the drummer of the 14th Company, 2nd Battalion, 1st Regiment of Pennsylvania during the Revolutionary War. So the same Johnny Wann whose name changes, who like keeps disappearing. He was also drumming the beat of the during the Revolutionary War. So, all right, that's what I got for you for now. So I'll pass it on to you.
Go back to the thing that shows the Johnny Wann timeline and the okay. So when did you make this?
Christmas Eve.
Okay, so you made this before you started watching Dark. After I told you about it, but before you started watching.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. So okay, so funnily enough, when we were in the opening segment of the show, when you were talking about the dance that you and I do, there was something I wanted to say, and I opened a window to talk about it. And then we just moved on and I forgot. And I was like, oh shit, I don't know if there's going to be a chance to go back to it. But then you went right back to this, which takes me to all of this. And I'm very excited for you to watch Dark, because I think there's a lot of stuff going on there that will finally like give us a sort of template. It's never exact, but for examining this from different angles to understand the origin of the dance that we are doing. Okay. So Germany. So my mom's family is from Germany, right? It would be interesting to check some of these locations, like somebody did some genealogy, right? And so it would be interesting to check the locations and how similar or non-similar that they were. But yesterday I was having this conversation with Jeff about the etymology of the word German, okay? And he was trying to explain it to me as something important to his preferred narrative about what's going on in the world. And he couldn't find that definition. He was like looking it up. He'd heard somebody say something, but I went and looked up the etymology of the word German in the meantime, right? And like the overall, like, there's several interesting definitions of the word German. But basically what the word means is having the same parents. Okay. And then there's also, if you look at some of the etymology, there was something about a dance. Let me find that. Hold on. German etymology of the word etymology. Okay. So it means of the same parents. And then there's this definition that says,
Can you share the screen?
Yeah. Hold on a second. Listen to. Okay, so of the same parents, genuine of the same parents, right? And then down here, there's this definition, a complex dance in which one couple leads the other couples through a variety of figures, and there is a continual change of partners. Okay, and if you, you will understand, like, if you think about what you and I have been doing and what we're doing now, and then you start to watch the relationships in the movie, in the show Dark, and the way that they evolve over time into and out of time, cross worlds and all of this kind of stuff. And it's, of course, it's shot in Germany. It's a German show, right? So this all has to do with being of the same parents and the complex dance which leads people through this interesting figure of continuity. Okay, so that is the word German, right?
Okay.
Now, the character where Michael Wann comes up is the kid who has gone missing. That is the start of this show is Mikkel. So Michael, right?
One nickel.
Right. Mikkel or nickel, right? But Mikkel goes missing, and there's this very mysterious person who energetically feels a lot like you, who
has he already shown up in the first two episodes? That character?
If you've gotten to the part where it says Michael Wann, then yes, the person who has the newspapers that say, like, it says basically, where is Mikkel? And he changes it to when is Mikkel and when.
Right, and that was the guy with the black hood.
The black hood.
Okay.
Right? And this is when we're watching.
And I think he's the same guy who hung himself in the very first scene of the first episode. No, he's not. Okay.
No. Okay, but we thought that we weren't sure.
Because they showed this scar on his neck.
It took a little while for us to figure that out and understand. At least where we are so far, we're into the third season. That's not reality yet, but that may become reality. Okay, but right. So I think one of the things that you and I have never discussed, even though we've had many conversations about the origin of Michael Wann, right, is the fact that the word means when. You are not like you are Michael When. There is a question of time embedded in your name. You're carrying the secret of that whole of time travel in your fucking name. We've never talked. I didn't know that that's what Juan meant in German, right? So the question is not where is Michael, right? Which I think sometimes people ask, where the fuck is Michael? I haven't seen a video posted from him in a long time, right? He's here, he's gone, right? Or who is Michael? You're, an enigma to some people. I think I have mostly an understanding, maybe a better understanding than anyone else, except for you, maybe at moments even a better understanding than you. But maybe we're all asking the wrong question. Maybe the right question is, when is Michael? And that's where all of this sort of not ever feeling comfortable or situated, like you want to get away from home, and then as soon as you're away, you want to go back, and da-da-da-da. As this show unfolds, you're going to start to see like, oh, fuck, right? Like this is, and this location where this is all starting from, it reminds me of Chatsworth, first of all, the location in which this is happening and all of the factors about it are a ringer for Chatsworth. But it also makes me think of, what did you call that forest you were living in Maryland?
The forest?
Old growth. You were calling it old growth, or
an old growth forest, yes.
Old growth forest, like it hasn't been changed.
Right.
And when I remember specifically, and we never got back into this because it was during this period of time that there wasn't always a stable internet scenario. So me using visuals was not ideal. But I started looking at old growth forests, and I remember thinking and then going and looking that it reminded me of some of these Mandelbulb fractal sets that I used to look at, that I would think were guiding me towards locations on the earth to like go into some kind of, this was when I was like living downtown in LA and on drugs and being taken out of my body at night and all kinds of weird shit. But I had this distinct feeling that this artwork was trying to show me where there were like holes in the ground that were portals to other places. And I was going to bring this up to you and I had totally forgotten about it, right? But that forest that they're in there in Germany looks quite a bit like an old growth forest. And you have this hole, right? You have this hole. So I thought that was interesting. But as this show unfolds, I'm excited. I really think you'll enjoy it. So I encourage you to continue watching it. And the layers and at points the show becomes frustrating because it is so complex. It is so challenging to keep track of everything that is going on, like all the people, all that kind of stuff. But I actually think that is the same as the knot that we're trying to sort out here. And I think the question of when we are is as valid as who we are, what we are, where we are, all of that kind of stuff. And so it would be really interesting to know if because your background of your family went back pretty far there. The person who did the genealogy for my mom's family, which she was able to trace back much farther than my dad's family, what I think 16th century or 15th century, how far was she able to take? It was pretty far back though. Yeah, 15th, and it was in the forest in Germany. I think she said the Black Forest in Germany. Right. So it would be really interesting if whatever this dance that you and I are doing is that there's some iteration of us that comes from the same parents. Right. And if you watch the way this develops throughout the show, like I think it would maybe come sort of the closest to the intertwinement that we're talking about here. Right. And how things are all connected. And the show goes into places that gets into almost everything you and I have talked about, Michael. And it all relates to some of these very strange locations, what has gone on there throughout history. Why is there energy plants or technology plants or things like that always located in these spaces? And who are the characters at play and why, right? And like what's going on with them over time. But that life thing that you showed me like begins to look like some of the things that we're tracking in this show, which is who over lifetimes, right? And are some of the people we think are one person really the other person too, right? Kind of thing. And it gets into, I mean, some of the places this goes, it's complex. It's a good mind exercise, right? It's definitely like if one likes puzzles or Seder squares or things like that, like this is a great show. If one just wants to relax while watching TV and not have to think about much, this ain't for you.
So as you're describing that, like I'm certainly experiencing like even to a deeper level of those actual things. I've got a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, who just moved into the house in Baltimore. And so he's like stepping into like where I was a year ago. It's 11 months off, but like seeing like the themes, like, you know, the same storyline being lived out through a different person, being finding myself now living in the exact same spot, going to the same church on like the anniversary of this great grandfather. Like that's like stepping into another storyline as well. And then seeing all of this stuff, like what we were talking about with and I'm curious to hear more about what you guys talk about with the MK Ultra, but like it's all kind of it's the same story being shown with different characters at different times, but there's a certain correspondence. What is the Johns Hopkins power plant? I've never even heard of that.
Okay, so it just occurred to me while you and I are talking to check and see where the closest nuclear facility is to where you were in Baltimore.
Okay.
Right. And I just typed in nuclear plant, Baltimore. Okay.
And you zoom in on the map?
Yeah. So these are all the nuclear. This is a lot. This is a lot.
That's a whole lot.
It's a whole lot. And what's interesting is I didn't click on anything, but this one jumped out quickly. Riverside Generating Station. Okay. Now, do you know JJ Rainblanc? She's a friend of Mission's. Have you talked to her? She's fascinating. I've been doing some shows with her that have gone into some really fucking cool territory, right? But one of the things that came up in my narrative with her is how I always seem to end up living on or near Riverside, or having these weird experiences on places named Riverside, right? And that's
all
part of her narrative too. And these are lots of times where we've experienced these weird temporal or, you know, distortion of reality kind of experiences. And in the case with her, some like crossover between her dream world and my real life. Okay. I did not click this. This just jumped right out. Riverside Generating Station. Okay. But the top of this list is Johns Hopkins power plant. Like Johns Hopkins was just like controlling the COVID scenario. You know, one of the things I've been looking into is this connection between genetics and nuclear facilities, or genetics and nuclear fusion or nuclear power. Okay. So where in here were you staying in Baltimore?
All right, let me if you were to go and zoom in on the Baltimore section, pull it, yeah, the other way. So the closest one, let's keep on going in to Baltimore.
I think you're around one of these areas, right?
I was more west. So where you see 40, you see where it says, pull it so I can see more on the left side, just a little bit more. What does that red thing say? Ascension at
Exelon?
No, below. Okay, do you see where it says Leakin Park?
Where's Leakin Park?
Upper left. Go the top.
Leakin Park. Yes. Okay.
Leakin. That was what I overlooked. That was the old growth forest, was Leakin Park, the Crimea Mansion at Leakin Park. That's where I was.
Okay. So we've looked at this before with the Franklin kind of here. So the closest Exelon. What is Exelon? Let's go down and see what Exelon is. It's not showing what Exelon is.
So the one which I think is most interesting, though, is the one which is called the Perryman plant.
Okay,
did you see where that was?
Where is the Perryman plant?
You had it on before. If you keep scrolling back. Now, yep. Keep going. It's going to be. Oh, you could stop there. You could.
Oh, I see it up here.
Yeah, click on Perryman. Like zoom in there.
So this would be near where your mom works, right?
Yeah, that's Aberdeen Proving Grounds.
Okay,
You see
that's
that?
what I thought. Okay, yep.
That is where the first computer is. That's like where, like, if you want to go and follow the Stranger Things / dark model of that's it. Like what's his name? Crossing the ferryman,
Yeah.
chasing the ferryman. This is chasing the ferryman. This is
Okay.
where it happens.
So Perryman Generating Station is a 353 electric generating peaking power plant owned by
Why
Constellation.
are my initials right there?
Right. Michael Wann Electric Generating. There you go. Right. Okay. So this is interesting here. The amount of plants around Baltimore are more than I've seen at most places. Now, my guess would be that also has to do with, look, there was an underwater explosion test facility. The amount of bays and inlets and things like that. They always seem to want to put nuclear facilities near bodies of water, which begs a question about the one in Chatsworth, because there is no above ground river. So my question is there a below ground river, right, in the Santa Susana Pass, right? But it definitely leads out to the ocean. But this is a lot of nuclear facilities, and the fact that there's a Riverside one and the fact that there's a John Hopkins one,
right?
Interesting to this narrative that I'm beginning to sort of roll down, right? But there is some, and this Exelon makes me think of Echelon, right? The Echelon program. But this is, I'm more and more convinced that wherever we have nuclear power plants or places where fusion is being experimented with on some level, then we have a strange overlap, the possibility of connected dimensions or temporal connections or things like that. And the way someone might experience that is dependent on genetics, right? So having genetic supercomputers or genetic and this was how Jeff and I got into this conversation yesterday, because I've been tipping at that, and then it came up in something he wanted me to listen to, that this connection between nuclear facilities and supercomputers that are tracking genetics, right? That it's basically like you and I might go to the same location, but if we like blasted a hole between timelines or dimensions, like your experience of it and my experience of it may be different, not just based on the fact that we're different people, but like literally in terms of like which versions of the sort of conjunction of those places one gets based on their genetics, as if your genetics are like keys to a locker or a room in a hallway, right? Okay, so there's a hallway, there are lockers, right? And yeah, your genetics open up this cabinet, mine opens up that cabinet, which all store some version of that period or that place or whatever kind of inside of it in terms of how it's experienced, right? So just now when I decided to look up nuclear power plant Baltimore, I was just looking to see if there was one near where you were, but I am simultaneously shocked and non-shocked to find that there's a Johns Hopkins power plant. And then there's also this Riverside generating station, right? Like, what is it generating? Like, right? Like there's the obvious idea, but then like what other iterations of a generating station? And then within this location, I can already find, if we started to do map porn without even zooming in any farther, connections to locations, names of locations that I have lived or we have talked about on our show over and over and over again.
Yes.
And you have right here Windsor and Winfield. The name of the place in dark is Winden. That's the name of the town, Winden.
So maybe a week, I don't even think it was a week ago. So I think I've sent to you before, like I wrote a guidebook to the Susquehanna, the 40th parallel to Susquehanna.
I have it.
And so the fourth right, I did that I brought someone to that spot just last week. And so that is in the shadows of 3 Mile Island. There are 3 arguably like world famous nuclear power plants. Fukushima, everyone knows like, I mean, if anyone knows about power plants, these would be the 3 you would know.
Right.
Fukushima, Chernobyl.
Yep. And 3 Mile Island.
Chernobyl is the date from Dark.
Dark. Yep.
November 5th, and then 3 Mile Island.
Right.
Because those are the 3 that have supposedly had like nuclear meltdowns, whatever that's supposed to be. So I was there a week ago. And then like, as you're talking about this, like, I'm just kind of like, you know, playing around with like touch points. So this person right here, I covered his name, but this is a really, really close friend of mine right here, who is, he's not just a nuclear engineer. He's the guy who like is the highest technical person who runs whatever that title would be. He reports to a business person, but like he runs the operations of the nuclear power plant. And so I'm always talking to him. Like, I'm like, what's that like? Like, what do you do on a day-to-day basis? Like how, like all of those sort of things. So like, I've got that connection in my actual personal life in the same way, like one of the sons who also lives on the property of Nome Countryside, he runs the maintenance crew of the nuclear power plant on the same place on the Susquehanna River. There are 3 nuclear power plants on the Susquehanna River right there. And so it's like, as you're bringing this up and like, you know, we're looking at this idea of like, what is a nuclear power plant? What is happening right there? Like, you know, it's that feels very close to the surface for actual experience for me.
Do you remember do you remember, we've talked about her a number of times on shows, my cousin Marky Post?
Of course.
Right. So her father has become the topic of a bunch of my shows lately. So this is Dick Post, right, who was a scientist at Livermore National Laboratory from the day from the day it opened till the day he died, right? And what's fascinating is this biography has been altered since the last time I looked at it several years back.
Okay.
A lot about nuclear fission and things like that, and now it's all about fusion. So something has changed in terms of the reality we're in, or in terms of like fusion is, you know, there was all these announcements. I went and found this. And then like literally like a few hours after I started talking about this on a show, they announced, Livermore Laboratory announces that they've achieved fusion. So there was a fusion project hidden under fission before, but as soon as they were ready to announce fusion, then now he is this scientist that has done more things about magnetic fusion energy. And this, like, I literally had an argument at one point with my cousin Marky about fusion versus fission. And she was telling me that like in fusion, especially those kinds you like, not going to be a thing. And now it seems like he's like one of the biggest scientists about it. Right. Huh. So I don't know if this is Mandela effect or if this is classified program shit. Right.
Right.
But all of the things that he is famous for would be the kinds of technologies that would enable what you and I were talking about in terms of how could we have been at the same place as children at our summer camps.
Right.
The magnetic lev trains that travel across at high speeds, all this stuff about magnetic mirror fusion. Remember one of the first Mandela effects was like mirror, mirror changed to magic mirror. Like these sounds like magic mirrors that create energy plasma fields between them that allow for a confined like field. Like it's fascinating to read this. Right. But so this idea that we have people working in high level nuclear positions and in this case, like some of the highest. Now, I may have met him once. If I do, I don't remember. And he's not biologically related, but this is married into my family. This is mixed now with all the same genetics, right? And they're definitely German. Right. So of the same parents and doing a dance of rotating casts of characters over time. right? Like there's definitely some German in her heritage. I'm not sure all of what Marky's heritage is, but there definitely is some of that. So this idea of being, what's the term? I can't think of it right now. When you're close to something, what's it? When you're close to something, proximal, right? We have this proximate, very close relationship in some levels, and you're talking about your friend, and it's interesting. He's at the plant that I chose. I said, that's interesting. What's that echelon thing? Sounds like echelon, right? So I think we're starting to uncover the layers of classification and hidden programs within programs that seem to have easy other explanations. And we're now into this scenario where Chernobyl is the center of what is definitely becoming this polarizing argument in the same way that like the Nazi shit was back in the 40s.
Yeah.
Right. Like the whole, I mean, and it's at Chernobyl. Like this is the, like, remember in the early days of the thing in Ukraine, they were talking about, oh, there's Chernobyl's there. This is going to be a problem if people shell that. There's still active nuclear material there. Like to me, the whole thing is all these arguments are over these locations that have access to, that are Dinuven belts, basically. Right? This is all an argument over the Dinuven belt. And, you know, like so many things we've talked about become factors in this show. So I had somewhere I was going with that I can't quite remember right now, because when you started talking about your friend being the nuclear scientist, I lost track of where I was going to go next, but that's okay. I think that we've just shown something kind of interesting here. I am like a fly on shit about nuclear science at this point. Right.
Okay.
I was just talking with Chris Snipes from the Melt. I know you're going to be on their show maybe tonight. Are you on their show tonight?
Oh, I need no, I think on the 31st. I need to send him some information.
On the 31st. Okay. That is fantastic. I loved being on that show. But I was on my show, and we did get into this whole narrative wrapped around Chatsworth and overlaying Twin Peaks over it, and this whole idea of like secret societies are what form amongst the people who are working at these nuclear sites during the day, right? And they're compartmentalized and they're doing their job, but they have all probably obviously noticed that there's some weird shit going on, and they form these groups. And sometimes there's multiple groups, and they talk about the weird stuff and exploring the weird stuff and what they can do with the weird stuff. And this is where the Dark Lodge and the White Lodge and blah, 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 right? But to me, this is all about sort of like there are locations that are access points to other realities, whether they be temporal or dimensional, right? And they exist at coordinates, but not just coordinates of location, also coordinates of time. And then it seems like there's the necessity for there to be like one strong energy meeting another, and whether that be a natural thing or a created thing, and then something like in the ground, like there's a kind of rock there, like collapsed limestone, or like, you know, whatever, some kind of something. There's some thing that like when all those things come together, it creates like a field or like a prismatic reality that allows entrance into something else. And as you proceed through dark, like, you know, to me, this is the big question of right now. And the fact that this nuclear fusion, have you heard all the articles that were released in the last couple of weeks about this achieving fusion and blah, blah, blah? And
I've not heard about the articles.
We're still only allowed to talk about nuclear fusion. Like you're still not really allowed to talk about cold fusion or, you know, these other more bizarre types that wouldn't require large government control of them. Right. You understand what I'm saying? But
right.
It's almost like there is some, and it was weird the way it synced with me discovering the rewrite of Dick Post's biography that then like within hours they made the announcement. It was like really weird. Right. So I think we're, you know, I don't know if this is an always thing or if we're going into one of these cycles. If we have hit the 40-year mark or the 33-year mark, right? And that there is this like sort of explosion or this sort of array of realities that are opened up for a period of time now for exploration in a deeper way than when normally you just have to follow specific. Like, I think that they're always accessible through specific pathways or with specific techniques or technologies. But I think there's a period of time when they're everything is more wide open. And I think we might be in one of those times. And it seems that what Roz has to say confirms that as well.
So definitely, on that, I want to then go just a little bit more detail on what this, like these are the physical locations.
Right.
Right here. And you could see like this triangle, like everything that falls along right here. This spot
right in the middle point, Atlantic City, which is where Elisa was growing up when we started we were talking about Atlantic City in relationship to the Allentown thing. That is dead fucking center in the middle.
Right there. Right here is where you find Chincoteague, Virginia.
I remember when you went there.
I go there quite a bit. In Chincoteague, Virginia, there's also something like right on the island next to it called Wallops Island, which is NASA's second most used launching location after Cape Canaveral. So for whatever the hell that means, no one's ever heard of Wallops Island. No one knows NASA does stuff, but it's happening there all the time. There's a lot of stuff which is like in this location. And now we've got and then particularly right here, like Philadelphia is at 39 degrees, 59 minutes in terms of latitude. And where Montauk is 41.000 degrees. So it's like this entire band right here in particular, which I believe is like right around where that what was the plane that went down into the Atlantic after taking off at JFK? It's right around here as well. But anyway, so there's a lot here physically, but then we're also hitting like this timeline of like August 2023 being 40 years to the day. I thought I had them here. I guess I don't. I also did a couple snapshots of what the heavens look like on the days which are going to be the exact 40-year reunion or anniversary of those times. And there's some interesting alignments in the sky as well, whatever that may mean, whatever constellations those are. And we get that as another popular name for companies that own nuclear power plants. You named Echelon, and Constellation is another company which owns them. So we're beginning to see like, this crossover. There's a very valid point, like right now on a large scale, like there's something in the time, which is, whatever that would mean, like we can access things.
What you said about Chincoteague is exactly like I've been having this conversation with lots of people who I've brought up Chatsworth to. In the documents around Borough Flats, it says the same kinds of things about how important the location is to our relationship with space and NASA and space travel. But like we're only ever hearing about the location in Florida and the location in Texas. We're never hearing about these more minor locations where there's all this other, sort of heritage stuff, right? Indian cave paintings, Indian stuff, and all this weird stuff. No one hears of Chincoteague. It's in the same way that no one hears of Chatsworth, in the same way that no one hears of other locations, right? And so, okay, let's take a break here, and then when we come back, I'm going to give you the update on the response we got, the interesting response we got from last time.
Oh, okay, yes, that sounds like a good crossover. I'm looking forward to that.
And there was also that I want to read you that little piece from that page that made me think of the 40th parallel kind of thing. There was an interesting section that talked about like the sort of requirements for the building of invisible cities kind of thing that I thought was kind of interesting that I wanted to share with you as well. So whatever else, that will be in the next segment. Patreon.com/offplanetmedia, projectkids.locals.com, or rockfin.com/Emily Moyer. We'll see you over there.